What's up, everybody? Masenko here, and I am joined by my good friend Miss Mag and up and coming friend Ted, who haven't really had any talking with lately, but we're gonna see exchange some thoughts, get some Pokemon discussion going. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Miss Mag.
Hey y'all, it's Miss Mag here. I'm not a stranger to the UGA, but I'm not competing this season, so I'm just rooting on for some good battles, and I'm here to do power rankings. Real excited to be back.
And go ahead and introduce
Everybody.
yourself, Ted.
I spoke there. Hey, everybody. I'm Ted. I'm your coach of the Sky Strikers. This will be my third season overall in the UGA, so I'm really excited to be back.
Yep, it is. I think this is my fourth, so been here since the beginning. It's been kind of a crazy journey, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. Excited to be in the same div as you, Ted. So I'm curious to see what y'all think about my team, and I'm gonna give my thoughts on your team as well. So just to quickly break down how this is gonna work, unlike other power rankings around Pokemon draft communities, I like to do it a little bit differently. I actually like to use a tier list for the teams, especially on week one, where there's going to be some differences in how certain teams operate, and generally, I think it's less helpful to see like just a straight 1 through 14. I think that being able to see like generally where your power level is, like categorically, just makes more sense to me, and feels more useful to others. But that said, this is. I mean, I've seen the teams, I've looked them over, but I haven't taken notes or like done deep dives into any of the teams, and I don't expect my co-hosts to have done the same. Props to them if they did, but um, you know, I think that most of this is just going to be us talking about the teams and kind of giving initial thoughts. And wherever we rank you, if you feel you have been misranked, you feel like your team's better than where we put you, or maybe even worse than where we put you, don't take this as gospel or anything. This is just our unprofessional opinion, and just to get some conversation going. So you guys have anything else to add before we hop into it? Nope. Alrighty.
Nope.
So we're going to start off with the Cardiff Kamalas. Their coach is Orange Soda, aka Kel, another good friend of the community. He's been in UGA for quite a while, I believe, as well. I remember he joined maybe season 2. But why don't I throw it off to Ted first to talk about how he feels about the team.
First off, the main vocal, obviously, probably one of the main vocal points of this team is that T-Tar Houndstone sand mode. Really common mode in VGC and in draft. Um, yeah, overall, really good partner with each other. Pairs up well with Iron Treads, actually. Um, have spraying those ground attacks next to that Rotom Frost with Levitate is nice, really nice mode. And then one little thing here as well with Inteleon and Toxicroak, they could go with Dry Skin and heal up with that with the Surf from
Ooh.
Inteleon. Potentially like Scarf, Inteleon, Surf next to Toxicroak could be something that could come in any given moment. Um, no, Indeedee paired up with the Armarouge is quite surprising, but I think it's pretty good on its own as well. So obviously, something to keep out for as well.
Miss Mag, do you have any things to respond to or say independently?
Um, yeah, I do like this team that the Kamalas have drafted. I was a big Inteleon fan back in Generation 8. I think Snipe Shot is a very powerful move, but it's not even so much the offense here as how supportive Inteleon is at either proccing weakness policies with Ice Shards, Aqua Jets, offering some speed control with fast Icy Wind here, or even just like utility stuff like U-Turn, Haze. I believe it also gets screens as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably like my favorite mon on this team. He's got a pretty nice little sort of sand mode, even though there's not like a sand abuser. I actually really like the idea of like T-Tarf was like Iron Treads, maybe possibly even Terra Rock Iron Treads just for a little extra damage. It's definitely a very specially heavy team. Oh, I missed the Houndstone. I'd be forgetting about Houndstone like with Sand Rush
Yeah.
sometimes, but I do. Yeah, so I like the sand mode, the sand, the Disquake, and the Inteleon are probably like some of my favorite parts of this team so far.
Yeah, I mean, this team is just really, really solid for all the reasons you guys stated. Like, there's some obvious modes, but I think there's also some pretty non-obvious modes as well. Like, Florges is one of the mons that I've used a lot in this generation so far, and especially in a Paradox format. If you can use the Symbiosis with like booster energy, you can get a lot of value, like next to Iron Treads, especially, which is just such a great pairing for the Florges, just defensive typing wise, right? It's two out of those three mons that you want out of your fantasy core. I also think, like you mentioned, Inteleon has like U-turn and stuff. Like Inteleon into weak Armourouge with like a Grass Terra or a Psychic Terra or whatever. Like you get that speed boost, weakness policy, and like you can start going crazy. I do feel like I really did want, like, with an Armor Rouge on this team, like it would be great to have an Indeedee, obviously, but obviously it's like going to be pretty expensive to try to get that and stick, get all the other modes kind of coherent still. So I don't know. It if there's a way to find some sort of like psychic terrain on this team, that'd be cool. Uh, I like the fake out pressure that this team provides with like Persian and Toxicroak, both of which sort of like have different ways that they pressure the field, which I enjoy. I think overall the team just looks really solid. It might struggle a little bit in Trick Room, just because you don't have like a mon in that 40 speed range that or lower that you want to be in for Trick Room. But I mean, just overall, it looks pretty nice, and you have some really great Terra options. Like you can't underestimate the Tyranitar. I don't think we've talked too much about the Tyranitar either, but what a great Terramon, especially in a closed Terra format, right? You can get rid of that 4 times fighting weakness and just like have so many different ways to offer pressure off that. So I hadn't really thought about how we're gonna like vote on where to put them, but like I was gonna put them in sort of like I mean, we haven't really seen them compared to other teams yet, and this might change for me. Like I might put them in a finals contender slot, but for right now, I think playoffs contenders like pretty good. Just like the team doesn't like super like it's a scary team, but it's not one of those. It's not like a panda team that from like VDL, if that makes sense to anybody. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys
I
think
think.
Yeah,
this falls?
I'll
Go
let
ahead,
Ted
Mr.
go ahead.
Wong.
No, go ahead, Ted. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I think where you place it right now, I think that would be a good spot for me personally.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a good spot for the Kamalas.
Yeah, I mean it's just like such a solid team. It has so much, like it has really good cores. It has really good offensive pressure and utility, and lots of cool little combos that you could do aside from the hard synergy, which is pretty great as well, and you have to prep for. It genuinely might be a finals contender slot for me down the line, but I want to see kind of how we're feeling about the other teams first. So let's move on to the Tokyo Tinkatons, which is a team that I actually helped draft. And I believe Miss Mag, you contributed as well. Brave did not draft this team himself. This was drafted mostly by his good pal, Pat Mack. And I think Pat Mack put together a really, really strong team for him. So I'm going to throw it to Miss Mag to start us off there.
Yes, as you just said, Brave decided to do this draft blind. So his good buddy Pat Mack, you might know him on Gotta Draft Him on YouTube. He actually helped draft this team for him, and he took some suggestions from some of us. So I did have a bit of sway into this team. I mean, the main thing I told them was like, you gotta draft Tinkaton because it's the mascot. We love a good mascot pick. Like straight up, I was like, if we don't draft Tinkaton, we are throwing, and there's Discord evidence to prove otherwise. But Tinkaton is an interesting mod to like center a team around because it is not the most offensive piece in the world, so you would not really think about like building a team around it so much as having it support a team that you're already building. But I think Pat Matt did a great job. He picked up Palafin, which is just honestly god awful oppressive in draft format a lot of times if you do not have correct answers for it. And then he kind of rounds it off with this nice like firewater grass core in the Tauros Blaze and Rotom Mo. Picking up the Crook in there as well to give some additional Intimidate support and a functional Disquake mode, I think is just was just fantastic. And then Cryo kind of just rounds out the top six real nice. So like I love this top six. I think this top six could literally come every week, and it would be absolute terror trying to figure out what's doing what, who's procking who, that kind of stuff. But then
Yeah.
the lower half of the draft isn't too bad either. Like getting Dragapult that late in the draft or whenever it was gotten, I think is a steal, honestly.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I really like some of the main core mons here. Like, um, I really enjoy how, because at least for me, and this is sort of what I conveyed to Pat Mack while he was drafting, like, I feel like Tinkaton is such a great mon for a pivot heavy team. And so I really like the many different types of pivot mons available to here. Literally, Palafin is like you need to pivot it in order for it to like really benefit from its its zero to hero ability. Um, but I also like the straight offensive pressure that a lot of these mons provide as well. Like just like leading the Dragapult, or leading like Cryogonal, plus Tauros or Crocodile, both of which get Anger Point. I will say that I think that the Tauros and Crook are sort of duplicitous. Like I don't think you need necessarily both of them because they both do Intimidate and Anger Point stuff. And I mean, obviously they are both weak to like water, for example. So it's like if you can get a good water type, you kind of shut down both of those potential options. Terra aside. But other than that, I think like this team just does so much. I really love the Rotom Mo as well for this team. Like easy Disquake with Crocodile, and everything else kind of just fits. Like I've actually been kind of down on Squawkabilly, but in a different league, I've been watching our good buddy Batista use it in WDC, and it's actually kind of pretty good. So I'm curious to see how that pans out. What are your thoughts, Ted?
Yeah, my thoughts are more of the same. I guess like the one interesting part is that Rabaska. I would like to see that interaction like between like that and Palafin. Like reviving that mid game and winning the game basically off like a wave crash or jet punch. So I think that's the one thing to note as well with this team. Like Rabaska provides that insanely good support for something like I said, like Palafin or Dragapult.
Yeah, absolutely. I even forgot about Revival Blessing for a minute, and like if you have a good pivot comp, like Revival Blessing does super well in that as well. So I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty high on this team, honestly. What do you guys think is sort of a spot for it?
I like playoff contender actually, and I will go on record saying I was also not super high on Squawkability, but after also kind of getting my keister handed to me with it, I guess I have to respect it a little bit more as a low tier pick. So I'd say it's a playoff contention. Like there are some duplicitous roles as you pointed out, but I feel like the Mons themselves are physically capable of doing a lot more diversity. That the duplicity in roles isn't like the worst knock against this team.
Yeah, I would also say that maybe part of the reason I'm not super high on it is the lack of paradox mons here. Like I think like having a really strong paradox mon for this team. I think like he was looking at like Sandy Shocks, for example, that ended up getting sniped from him for that B tier
Yeah,
slot. Like if that had been on the team, I think I would have been a little bit more ready to call this like one of the top teams. But other than that, I think this definitely makes it to playoffs with just how strong it is just up front.
that's
Um,
true. But I do like the fact that he did not get a Paradox Mon, but he picked up the Pult, and I think that's a nice consolation prize because at least Scarf Pult can challenge speed tiers on a lot of booster Paradox mons.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's just, obviously, Paradox Mons. Like I think people are kind of mixed on whether or not they are super duper, OP or not, or if they're just kind of more higher end mid range, like kind of on the stronger side, but not like broken. I do think there are some just broken Paradox Mons personally, but yeah, I think not drafting one isn't a dock against this team, especially with some of the Mons he picked up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to Sin City Scoundrels. This is my team, and I'm just going to hand it off to you guys to rank it because I'm obviously pretty biased at how good I think it is. Spoiler alert, I think it's good. That's why I drafted it. So I'll just hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, this team is really strong. Obviously, I like that combo between Collect Clean Iron Hands. Obviously, having the double screens next to the Iron Hands is extremely scary, and it's hard to break without screens removal. Um, and especially like in Trick Room with Iron Hands next to a Ranguru with that Instruct Thunder Punch or Instruct Wild Charge is going to do a lot of damage. Um, as for like the lower end tiers, I like them a lot. Charizard, I like that as well with the combo with Cluffy because Cluffy does get Sunny Day. So setting up that Sun with the Charizard is nice. Arbor Leva is obviously a nice supporting grass type. I like Seed Sower a lot. Haven't personally used it yet, but from what I've seen in the draft community so far, it's done pretty well. So I like what it does and what it provides for this team. Um, Moving down to the Greninja and well, mostly Greninja. I really wish it does get Battle Bond currently in game, but it doesn't. So that's kind of sad. But Protein is very nice. Having the stabbed option between like a Hydro Pump or Dark Pulse is nice as well. Um, and then like for the lower end tiers, like Jump Bluff and Haunter, I think they provide pretty much good support as well. Jump Bluff is your Tailwind user, has Rage Powder, Sleep Powder, good stuff from coming from that. And then Haunter is like another good secondary special attacker. Does get Trick Room as well if you really wanted to use that. Probably not because you have a Ringaroo, but I think overall really solid team. I like what it does.
All right, I guess that tosses it over to me. So I really, really like how this draft ended up turning out. I would say that the best parts of this draft are not only just like the broad variety of the speed tiers, but it's also just in conjunction with the nice array of speed tiers, like the different modes that this team is very capable of doing. Like there's some weather synergy in there with Jump Bluff, with Charizard, even with Arboliva. Harvest is a thing. But then there's also some rain weather synergy in there with just like boosting up the power of Rotom Wash and Greninja's water type moves. And then you throw the Iron Hands as a sort of like glue piece on there that can run a number of different sets. You have the redirection to set it up. You have the general fake out support that it provides to set your other mons up. It's a pretty monster of a team. And then you have like the lightly spiced in there like Disquake modes with the Donphan and the Rotom Wash. The Oranguru just can be again another one of those glue pieces. Like it can run symbiosis stuff, it can set up Trick Room, it can run telepathy sets for Disquakes and all that stuff. I love it. It's just a very balanced team. I think my only real like legitimate knock on this team is depending on how you approach matchups. I feel like there might just be too many options. Like there might even be option overload, which really would hinge on your ability to play these mods skillfully. Not that I think that's a problem for you, Masenko, but I can see where like even a really skilled coach might suffer from just like this team can do so much. So I'll be really curious to see what your thoughts on that perspective are and how you would even approach like managing it week to week.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of bounce off what you guys said, not gonna rate it myself, but I'm really excited to use it for just all the optionality that it provides me. And a lot of these mons are also mons that I'm pretty familiar with. Like I've used at least half of these before in other leagues, or even in UGA previously. Like Klefki, I've used before in UGA, and I'm excited to try Mon like Iron Hands out, which is just like definitely a very me type of Mon, which is why I wanted to first pick it if I could. But yeah, super excited to utilize it. What do you guys think in terms of tiering it here? Starting with
I
Miss Meg,
think sure.
or I guess Ted, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Um, I think this definitely has finals potential. Um, but conservatively, I would say a playoff contender.
Miss Meg.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's definitely playoff contender or finals contender, and I think it is subject to reevaluation just as the other teams that have come before it, but definitely playoff contention right now.
Okay, I'll put it here, and we can come back and evaluate a couple of these if we want to. If nothing ends up in here, we can always figure out which ones were our favorites. Or we can just remove the tier. Honestly, um, doesn't matter. All right, moving on to the Los Angeles Linoons. Uh, I don't know this coach personally, but they have a pretty cool looking team going on here. I do really like. I'm just gonna kick us off if that's all right with both of you. I do really like the Roaring Moon Azumarill pairing to some degree. I mean, it's a lot of physical offense in that sort of pair, and I'm seeing overall a decent amount of physical offense from the team from its main cores. But you do have mons like Magnezone and Ferrigiraf, who is not to be underestimated in terms of the special damage output that it can do. And of course, you have Rotom Fan, who is just a really solid mon for this generation as well. We were actually just talking about this with Batista, who's also running Rotom Fan, and just like Terra Electric Rotom in this gen is just so good. And Rotom Fan has a really solid defensive typing already. So just a really good draft in my opinion. But I do think that there is a lack of obvious like cores that I'm finding like a lack of obvious synergies. I'm not sure if any mons get beat up for like Arcanine. I'm a huge fan of the Venonat personally. Actually, Venonat is like kind of its own fungus, and fungus is I think a higher tier anyway. Might have been in D tier. But it like basically does the exact same thing, and with like compoundized sleep powder, you can just put stuff to sleep for free. And yeah, I don't know. This team has just like some really solid value picks, is what I would call it. Without any sort of like super obvious synergies that I'm finding. If anybody else wants to pick it
Yeah.
up from here, I'll
So
stop.
jumping off your Justified Arcanine convo there, Fur Giraffe does get beat up, and I know this because I've ran that same combo before with Scarf beat up into Arcanine. So that's something that players have to look out for between those two combo leads. Um, but also like the Roaring Moon for Giraffe combo as well. Like that thing is so annoying. I faced it 3 times already this generation, and it's super annoying. So um, that's a really strong combo together. And like you mentioned, Masenko, like Azumarill Roaring Moon is really strong together as well. So and like along with like the low tier picks, like with Spiritomb, providing that low tier Trick Room as well alongside for Giraffe is really good for their lower speed tiers.
Absolutely.
All
Mm.
right, I guess I'll chime in. Yes, I was also going to point out that Fargraf does get beat up. I have also seen that combo in which you speak of before its head. Not necessarily the most successful thing, but it is nice that you can have a beat up mon that does not have to worry about being faked out or being sniped by any priority and is pretty bulky. Um, This is also another team that has a Disquake mode. Don't sleep on Camera Up because Camera Up is actually a really nice low tier mon. Flexible offenses can be run physical or special pretty cleanly, even though most people just use special and spam eruption. Totally understand why. Um, and Rotom Fan may not be the most desirable of the Rotoms, but like you still have to kind of put respect on the fact that there is a Disquake mode here. I like the low tier Venonat pick as well because I think as far as redirection goes, if this team did not have Venonat, I would say it is a lot worse off. Like many of these mods enjoy having setup, and I think just having Hariyama as fake out support would not be enough. But I agree. I think the biggest thing I would love to see, I don't see here, is some of those cores uh, incomplete. Like I wouldn't mind if this team had a steel type for example, of any kind. Oh, I
It
keep
gets
forgetting about
Magnezone,
Magnezone. Yeah,
but
yes, that's fair.
it doesn't have. So here's my sort of like here's my thing about the team. I think it's like every single mon you pick they picked has high value, um, but I think that like you can easily cobble together some really solid teams and cores, and like especially with Terra to patch up some of the like interesting types that might sneak through. This team can very easily be a very highly successful team. The one thing I will say though is that you do have like Tailwind with like Roaring Moon, for example. But with like Roaring Moon aside, the speed tier is quite middling overall. Middling to low. You know, obviously you have mons like Camerupt and Spiritomb and Appleton, for example, like rounding out your sort of Trick Room core, which is pretty solid. And you do have some priority, right? Like you get Aqua Jet from Azumarill. You do get like a couple of fake outs. You get like if you really wanted to go like extreme speed Arcanine, I'm pretty sure that could be pretty effective. Spiritomb gets like Shadow Sneak and Sucker Punch and all that kind of stuff. And you're also immune to priority with Farigiraf if that's what you want. So like overall the utility's there, but the obvious upfront sort of speed that you would get from just like drafting a mon with over 100 base speed, um, like that might you require a little bit of setup to get to the speed tiers that you want to get to most of the time, and like against certain teams that's going to make them struggle, I think. What do you guys think about that bold statement?
I can agree with that. I think that was before noticing that Magnezone was a steel type. Sorry, Magnezone. I think that was also going to be my sort of critique is that I look at these mons and knowing their speed, most of their speed tiers off the top of my head, I do think it is a little too hard Trick Room centric, and I do think they would suffer against some faster teams. Like Farigiraf is very good, and Spiritomb are very good Trick Room setters in their own right, but I think it's just I think what Roaring Moon is the only one with a triple digit base speed tier. I do feel like at least one other mon there would be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you guys.
cool. Anything else to add, Ted?
No, I think we got over it pretty much everything.
Yeah. So like that's kind of so for me, I think putting it in the wild card tier makes the most sense just because and for the record, wild card basically just means like it has a really solid chance of getting into playoffs. Like I think like in terms of the power level, it's there, but it maybe requires a little bit more work or a little bit of luck to get them past that hump. Um, so that's where I put it, just because I think that you're literally going to have to like figure out some of these speed tier issues. Like throughout the season, you're going to be faced with like, okay, how do I outspeed things this way? Especially against like if you're against a psychic terrain team, and there are going to be two of those overall. Like I think not having to rely so much on priority is going to be an issue. So what do you guys think? Wild card?
Yeah, I think wildcard is alright there.
Okay.
I'm good with wildcard. Makes the most sense.
Okay. Moving on to the Miami Fins, coached by Archery. Gotta say, I really love the logo. Very cool. And I'm gonna pass it off to Ted to start this one out. Gives a
All
rundown
right.
of the week.
Yeah. Overall, this team is like really, really slow outside of the Iron Jugglers and the Tauros. So I'm excited to see this kind of Trick Room oriented team, but having that Iron Jugglers mode um, is going to be interesting as well. I like Mudsdale. Inner focus, stamina, really both good, really good abilities paired up with the Slow King and Trick Room is going to be nice as well. Um, Scissor providing that nice steel typing for this team is also really good. Um, yeah, I just kind of like that steel typing for this team. Um, and then Tauros Paldea providing that screens removal is also going to be really nice because the majority of their team wants to be dishing out a lot of damage, like Juggalos and Skeledirge and Mudsdale as well. So that's a really nice pickup for their team. And having screen support with Impidimp is also really nice because having that bulky screens next to like Mudsdale and Skeledirge is going to be really crucial for them.
So just to quickly correct something, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't checked Impidimp this gen, but I know last gen it did not get screens as opposed to its evolved forms.
Yeah, this generation they gave Impidimp
Oh,
double screens.
very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, their move pools are basically the same across all three forms, well, like
Sweet.
aside from some minor changes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, I think that's pretty crazy good. I don't know if they needed. I mean, there's so here's the thing. I really like the Stantler for this team for like as a screen setter as well. Um, just this core of Skeledirge, Slowking, Stantler kind of goes crazy, in my opinion, because obviously both Skeledirge and Slowking are weak to Ghost, but then you can introduce the Stantler into that. And the Jugulus also resists Ghost, which is great. And you have Mons on the team as well, like Muck, who has like Sucker Punch and whatnot to deal with Ghost types. Uh, so like, I think that core just goes crazy in Trick Room. And if you can get screens up as well, like with Impidimp, it's like really, really bulky. It almost reminds me of like Tyler's team from VDL, which is in the finals right now. Just like super, super, super bulky, lots of damage control, and some key like support mons. What do you think, Miss Mag?
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. It's actually funny that we can say that the team is pretty slow because yes, there are only a couple of mons with again triple digit speed tiers, but I actually like the fact that he picked up Haxorus. Haxorus is not terribly slow. It's like I think base 97, like it's right outside there.
Mm-hmm.
But it boasts like a really strong attack score, so like it's hitting hard. Skeledirge, which I mean, if you've been following Archery's run in VDLS from last season, he has had some whopping of games with Skeledirge racking up numerous kills. So I think that just from a comfort perspective, he'll be pretty equipped to run this squad into, I would say, well, we'll get to the tiering later, but I would probably put this squad in at least wild card. I do think some of the holes in this team might be a little bit exploited. Like, I don't actually know what gets beat up on this team, if that is even an option for like Mudsdale. I wish Glaceon got Frost Breath, unless it actually does, and I've been wrong all
Mm.
these years. But I don't think it gets Frost Breath.
I think that for me, the the same sort of criticism applies to this team as the previous team. I think the speed tiers are a little bit slow. Like I'm just sort of parroting what you said, Miss Mag, but I think there is a slight difference in the sense that you have like Impidimp with Thunderwave, potentially like Scary Face, right? But I also think that's like putting a lot of like basically putting a lot of pressure on the Impidimp on this team to try to like set up screens and give speed control. Iron Jugulus obviously does pretty well to set up Trailwind and stuff, and I know you're a big fan of the Jugulus, Miss Mag. So I don't know. I'm like, I also Scissor gets Tailwind as an option, by the way. Just something that I was surprised about when I first saw that. So it's there, but again, you're gonna have to take a turn to try to like set it up and that turn can often be a really important, right? You're not always going to have that freedom, and if somebody catches you with a wild taunt or you know manages to OHKO you with something randomly and you just didn't expect, it's going to like potentially make your whole game plan fail. So I'd also say at least wildcard slot, but I do think that this team does have slightly more tools than the previous one.
I could compromise with top of wild card
Yeah.
for the moment. Yeah.
Ted, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say also wild card.
Okay. Well, we'll put them in the top at wild card. Again, we can adjust some of these, and again, this is all just sort of like opinion, and we're not rating your team as professionals or anything like that. It's all just sort of our hard first look at it, right? So moving on to the Daytona Drifloon. Another coach I'm not super familiar with, but why don't we throw it to Miss Mag to start us off with this one?
All right. I will start with the things that I like about this team. I like Tinglu. I think Tinglu has amazing untapped potential in draft. Dark and Brown offensively are pretty good stabs, and then you throw it in with the Vessel of Ruin, which weakens all of the special attacking mons from being on the field, and I think it is just a nice solid piece to kind of build around. I like how he's kind of supported it with a rain mode. A lot of popular Terra choices for the Tinglu are often like grass or poison. So the rain mode is kind of nice just to give you something else to kind of prep for. And the fact that his rain sweeper is actually an ice type, which can help against some of those really pesky grass types, would be very nice. But after that, and then of course Mousehold is Mousehold. Mousehold's broken. Just straight up, Mousehold's broken.
Yeah.
Nothing more to say than that. Outside of that, that's kind of where I start to like fall out of love with this team. Like, I'm a little mystified as to why Toad School, Cacturn, and Breloom all need to be on this team. I already think you have sufficient redirection in Mousehold in and of itself, and I get that. I think Toad School actually gets Trick Room. I'm not sure if I know the Evolve form does. I don't remember if this one gets Trick Room,
I
but
can check if you like, but yeah, I'm not sure
yeah,
either.
yeah, you can double check, but like I think the three grass types are a little bit kind of superfluous. Like, I don't understand what role they're doing so different from each other that they kind of have to be here. I like Luxray. Luxray is also fine, and Glamora as well, but I just feel like there's a little bit of role overlap there, especially with those three grass types. And I guess Orthworm to a degree, but Orthworm is kind of nice because you can sit it next to Tinglu and spam Earthquake, and you can have it as a switch in for the Glamora, who is quad weak to ground as well. But then you don't even almost need that because you have three grass types.
Yeah. Uh, Ted, what are your thoughts on this team?
Okay, so I don't know if you guys seen that meme where they have Iron Bundle, Chi-Yu, Chien-Pao, Dragonite, and then they have Ting-Lu and Earthworm. That's kind of the first thing that I see with this team is that Ting-Lu and Earthworm combo. Like spamming those earthquakes next to Earth Eater is so good. Having that like instant recovery option after you use Shed Tail was really nice as well. And then like Pokemon like that benefit off from that, like Beartic, Glamora, Breloom, those three specifically benefit off the Shed Tail really well. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting going forward into the season.
Yeah. So for the record, Toad's Cool does get Trick Room, but yeah, I mean like this team, I'm both in love with it, and I have basically the same exact criticisms that I have that Miss Mag pointed out in terms of like the triple grass types being completely unneeded, especially because you already have redirection and spore for the team. And with a good ghost type, like I know Banette isn't super good, you could easily, set up Trick Room and whatnot. I think a pretty solid pickup for this team, in my opinion, is if you were to trades the Toadstool and the Banette for something else, you could pick up Poltegeist for a D tier. I ran Poltegeist Mousehold in VDL, and it was incredibly powerful because you have so many different ways to activate like what Poltegeist wants to do next to Mousehold, right? You have Shell Smash redirection, you have beat up weak armor if you really needed it, or just like U-turn into like a Terra Grass or Psychic with weak armor, into like a stored power, like if you do Terra Psychic stored power with like weak armor, weakness policy, it's kind of crazy good. Not to mention, like, you can set up Trick Room with like a bulky Poltegeist set, and like Friend Guard helps out as well. So just like super wonderful pairing there, just to throw that out for you if you're interested. But yeah, I mean, like, Ting-Lu terrifies me. I've never faced a Ting-Lu before, but just like looking at what it can do is like it's gonna demand so much respect. And like with a closed Terra meta, it's like you don't even know if you can hit it for super effective half the time. um, like when you're going up against it. And if they go for something like Terra Grass, for example, you at least, and like this benefits Earthworm as well. You have, like Miss Mag pointed out, Pelipper setting up the rain to reduce fire type damage is really really nice. So just overall, this team actually scares me quite a bit. Minus the sort of like low tier, figuring out those synergies might be kind of important. And I would maybe look to find like one of the Rotoms. I don't know if any of them are still available, instead of like Luxray maybe, because like Disquake is always a thing with Ting-Lu, and you have a really good you have some really good options for Disquake here. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a scary team, like, honestly, just mostly because of the Ting-Lu, and like we haven't even mentioned like Lamora, who is such a good mon as well. And that's basically my thoughts on it. I'm putting it in playoff contender for me, just because of some of these cores. But what do you guys think?
I definitely will agree that, in spite of my largest criticism being that there is the overlap of the three grass types, I would definitely say for now it can go in the bottom of the playoff contender category. It definitely is a great team at its skeleton. It just needs a bit of refinement, but not enough to go lower than playoff contender.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would also agree with that.
Okay. Sweet. Cool team. Moving on to OC Frey's Pogging Porygons 2. Rest in peace, his old logo, which was just like a MS Paint Porygon pogging. It was great. I mean,
Rumors say
really...
he still likes that.
Well, why don't I pass this off to Miss Mag to start us off? I talked a lot in the last one.
I love this logo. I don't know what you guys are talking about. This logo's heat. This logo is everything I fear about Porygon 2. But speaking of fearing, I fear this team a lot, and I'm not even playing in this season. This is a very deceptively well-crafted team. I think that he did a phenomenal job of like making a team that is both outwardly not seemingly threatening, but also has like a lot of intricate sort of soft synergies, as a term that you like to use a lot of the time, Masenko. So I won't blow up his whole spot, but like, first of all, he drafted Fluttermane. Fluttermane's really good. Some people call it broken. I'm not biased at all. It's just a very good, flexible mon that can set Trick Room. People tend to forget that it can set Trick Room. It doesn't usually like to set Trick Room, but it does have the capability to set Trick Room. But you just look at Fluttermane Goth and immediately just have to worry about Perish Trap. Just off the rip, you have to worry about Perish Trap. That's a threat. And then you start scrolling down the roster. He's got two of the starters from the generation. Quaquaval is actually really strong, with Moxie Aquasep giving it essentially a Dragon Dance every time it starts picking up knockouts with Aquasep. That kind of snowballing can get out of control really quickly. And then Typhlosion is really good on the special side with like Scarf Eruption and whatnot. So I like that sort of pairing. It's like we've gone from the sort of the Perish Trap mode that you need to prep for to like, okay, here's some of my offense. Staraptor is nice blue. You get Intimidate, some speed control. I'm a big Nassau Stack fan. I think it's great Eviolite mon, especially for its tier. And then further down, he kind of cements it together with like King Gambit as just a general big stat stick that often hits extremely harder than it should. And then Serena just to wrap it up. So you get a Firewater Grass core there, nice little Steel Fairy core pairing, and then Spupa for redirection. Like he's checked off so many boxes.
Yeah. I'll hop in just briefly. Like, basically, you covered everything that I wanted to say, but I just wanted to point out that like the King Gambit, Fluttermane, Gothitelle, core is just so strong, right? It's like really powerful. And you can't really even bring Intimidate super easily into like Quaquaval, which I really think is an important part of making Quaquaval work. Your speed tiers are beautiful, right? You have like a ton of different ways to gain speed. You have like really solid utility with Zarina blocking priority. You have Star Raptor with Intimidate and like Final Gambit type stuff. Like Knuckle Stack, as you said, really cool and honestly has a ton of like is a threat if you don't prep for it properly. I don't know how much I'm sold on the Spupa still. I know it did really well recently in a particular division of a different league, but and everybody's kind of on that hype train. I don't know if I'm on that hype train yet or not, but I'm keeping an open mind. And if it is as good as they say, this team kind of comes together in very beautiful ways. I'll pass it to you, Ted.
Yeah, honestly, this team's like really close to VGC team because we've seen Fluttermane and Gothitelle in the main format, and then King Gambit alongside of that just screams VGC. So if you don't have the correct answers to those main three options, then you're basically done for. Well, not done for, but like you're awfully close to being done
Right.
if you don't have the correct answers for those three mainly.
Yeah. I mean, it just looks really solid. I'm gonna say this is my first like finals contender team personally.
Same. I was gonna be bold enough to put it in finals contender
Yeah.
as well. Like there's just like you said, like I also have to be a little bit more convinced on the Spupa, but like on its face, friend guard, cheap redirection, like it's worth a prep spot.
Yeah. I was gonna say there is like a slight worry about like flying coverage for this team, but then I remembered King Gambit was on it, and I was like, not the worst.
And Nassau Stack.
Well, I was gonna say Knuckle Stack and Ampharos being your only like flying resists is kind of an issue for the main Firewater Grass core, but like King Gambit, right? Like I don't know. I think it all works really well. So yeah, finals contender for me. We good to move on? Any other comments?
No,
Okay,
we're good.
King Gambit broken. That's my
King
comment.
Gambit is broken. So Clofit crabs. Love the cloth, the crabs. Everything about this is great. You even drafted cloth. Ted, why don't you start us off on this one?
Okay. Obviously they picked up the mascot cloth, but that was later in the round. But outside of that, I really like the in duty with this scene specifically because uh, Annihilate Salamence, even Palma benefits a lot from redirection. Like having like a free bulk up or a free Dragon Dance could definitely set the tone of the game very quickly and very fast. And having Morgrem with double screen support as well is really good for both Annihilate and again Salamence. So if you like with the previous team, if you don't have the right uh, counters for this team, is going to become a really big problem really fast. Um, I, the Sea Titan is a little bit of an interesting pick as well because I don't think I see a Snowscape outside of the Sea Titan itself, so that's a little bit concerning. But it can be run under Trickroom as well with like Belly Drum, um, Ice Shard, Liquidation, Terra Water with that. So overall, really good options there. Ditto again, it's like a wild card pick because like you can beat any Pokemon that is right in front of you. So that can be really scary, especially if you're in front of a boosted mon like a Roaring Moon, or a Walking Wake, something like that. So overall, really solid team. I like the Indeedee F paired up with like top tier mons. So yeah, overall, really solid team.
Yeah. Um, I think that this team has some really good sort of just natural synergy to it as well. You mentioned a lot of it. I do think there is some anti synergy with like sometimes going to be wanting to run Prankster Morgrim to like be disruptive, and then you can't really run Psychic Terrain with that. Same with like Palmot wanting to fake out certain targets potentially, but I mean, you can always just not run the Psychic Terrain if you really want to run like fake out and stuff. So I do think that's really nice. I think Annihilate and Didi is like such a powerful pairing for so many reasons. Um, I do think like Satitan is also a really underrated mon. Something you don't see too often is like, yes, it is a slush rush mon, but it's also a mon with thick fat. And that lets you mitigate that fire weakness that usually would pose ice types like some big issues. And otherwise, belly drum, thick fat, Satitan behind Indeedee is just kind of strong. Cloth also gets Shell Smash. Am I correct in saying that? In assuming that? I know its ability is kind of Shell Smash, but maybe it does or doesn't. But um, either way, yeah, I feel like this team has a lot of setup. I think the speed tiers are there. Overall, pretty solid. I don't have like too many crazy criticisms for it. Okay.
To answer your question, it does not get Shell Smash.
That's so weird to me, but yeah, I mean, fair enough. What do you think, Miss Mag?
Yeah, I like the synergy that this team and this coach rather has put together. Uh, since we've harped on Titan a lot because it does seem like the sort of the odd ball out because you normally expect it to come with a snow mode. I will say that the fact that Titan has a extremely large base HP stat, coupled with the fact that they have Frankster screens, can make it almost exceedingly difficult to try to KO. And it gets Sheer Force. It gets Life Orb Sheer Force, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
moves to abuse it with, and a pretty good base attack stat.
Oh yeah.
So, and I know that's one thing that neither of you two kind of picked on. It gets a base 113 attack stat with Life Orb Sheer Force and a pretty good amount of coverage. So, I think coupling that with either Indeedee or screens might be even more frightening than just like the belly drum setup stuff
Yeah.
that can kind of be offset with like a mirror herb tech, which is something I would probably bring against a lot of members of this team. Like, I've never seen a team that screams like I would like to set up more in probably my entire career. But what
Yeah.
I love most about that is that they picked up two Haze users to round out their draft in Rubber Room and Quagsire, and they actually work here. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're not just taking them to spite your competition, but like it works. Like that fantasy core of Salamence and Morgrim and Rubber Room, which is not a core that you would probably think of conventionally, they cover each other real nicely. And
Yeah.
Morgrim can support with fake out to have either one of them set up, or it can set up with screens to make them a lot bulkier to live hits. And I think I really love that about this team.
Yeah. I think I'm not a super huge fan of Rev Room. Not necessarily here. I think you're right to say that like if there was a team to run Rev Room, this would be the team to do it. Like Salamence plus Morgrim. Um, I tend to think that there is maybe a little bit too much setup on this team. Like Annihilate does take some time to get rolling. Salamence, I feel like, doesn't really offer that upfront damage that you want all the time safely. Um, I feel like in order to, and you mentioned the Titan, right? I think the Titan is maybe the exception here with like Sheer Force Life Orb, Everything else kind of just I feel like is lacking a little bit. Like at least even Flareon, if you want to get its physical set up and running, you want to have like Toxic Orb activate. And I also think there's a distinct lack of like strong special attackers on this team. Like obviously Salamence can run special attack, like it can be a special set, but I don't know. I feel like if you can stop setup behind Indeedee, like I feel like the team struggles a little bit to figure out exactly how it's gonna do it without like overcommitting like choice bands and whatnot to certain mons. Um, I don't know if
I can
that's
agree.
controversial.
No, I can agree with that. And like kind of like I said a lot of the things I like about the team, but one of the things that I have to say I don't like about the team is I do agree. It did seem a little too one dimensional. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of Ditto in drafts. I'm just not. Now that might be a hot take, but I don't think that there are team like Ditto's not just sort of like a Glumon in the sense of like certain other mons might be like maybe Annihilate or a Salamence where, or even a Palma where they can kind of fit on a lot of different comps. I think Ditto requires a little bit more than that personally. But one thing I would love to see in the way of just adding a little diversity to this team is I would love to see any way to get Annihilate going like beat up or like I don't know, even side pinmill or something to get like those hyper rage fist builds going, just to offer it some other options in terms
Yeah.
of what it can do.
Yeah. I think Ditto is a really good anti setup mon overall because you can at least steal their stats like if they're going for like a belly drum with something, right? But it doesn't feel like this team really needs the Ditto too much. Um, Ted, do you have anything you'd like to ruminate on with respect to this team?
Uh, no, not really. I think we covered all grounds basically already.
Yeah. Uh, this might be my first kind of middle of the pack team. I think a lot of this strategy to me doesn't feel it feels somewhat one dimensional, but I do think there is a lot of power to be had if that does come up. So maybe it's kind of in the middle of wild card / middle of the pack. Um, I'll let you guys decide on that though. I'm not particularly married to either or.
I would more say I would probably say middle of the pack. I think it's just like right there or just a low wild card team. If they sneak in just barely there. So, but overall, I think it's definitely a middle of the pack team.
Yeah, I would say definitely pretty firm middle of the pack for me. And again, these are week zero power rankings. No games have been played. No
Yeah,
stats have been accrued. So like, take it with a grain of salt. But everyone
definitely.
kind of has to be ranked somewhere. You feel?
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the Salt Lake Knackles. Their logo either hasn't been uploaded or something like that. I don't know. I'm the mod for this division, so I'm not. Yeah, it's maybe my fault for not knowing what's going on here. But they did upload this little uh, like backdrop as a logo earlier on before the season started. So I'm going to be using that to tier them. And I'll throw it off to Miss Mag. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on this team.
All right. So here are the things about this team that I like. I like Walking Wake. I think it is a very cool Pokemon with a lot of flexibility. I like the Grafia support for it in either, I guess, rain or sun, because technically, if they wanted to run sun for whatever reason, its a signature move doesn't weaken in sun. It actually, I believe, it gets stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I like Volcarona a lot here as both redirection and setup. And I really like Sandy Shocks. I think it's a nice sort of Gloomon. Oh, and Chestnut. Chestnut's like secretly broken. It has like a really good move pool that I just learned about recently. So yeah, that Firewater Grass Core and the Grafia and the Sandy Shocks really make me kind of happy. After that, I'm a little not like I see the solid Trick Room mode for sure, and I know Volcarona can set Tailwind, as can Halucha. But the one thing I wish this team had was like I don't know, I've never seen a team that really would prefer to have Ndidi in a long time. Like Ndidi of honestly any either or even the male one would be fine here because like there's a couple of unburdened opportunities that I think are a little bit missed out on. Just even having psychic terrain to help Hatterene set up Trick Room a little easier, and also boosted psychic type attacks might be very nice here. Yeah, that's I would say that's kind of where I'm at with this team. Like it's got a good range of speed tiers and a good range of offense on both sides of the spectrum, but
Yeah,
the support option is just like a not quite hitting there for me.
I can see that. What's your thoughts, Ted?
Yeah, I think Miss Mag named all the good parts of this team. I guess like the one oddball, I guess you could say, this team is that like little mini rain mode outside of Walking Wake is that Grafai and Dreadnought. I like those two paired well together. Setting up the rain immediately and just going straight for that shell smash. Um, well, a little bit greedy and a little bit risky at this both at the same time. I think if put in the right situation, I think those two can sweep together pretty well.
Yeah. So I tend to agree mostly with what Miss Mag said. I'm still kind of thinking about this team, right? I think there's a lot to think about with it, just to sort of see, um, like where it could possibly be finding hidden synergies. Obviously, the sun mode is incredibly powerful, not just for the reasons that you both said, but because like just because photosynthesis on this team, right? Walking Wake and Sandy Shocks both gets photosynthesis, and that being able to just activate Sun for those abilities is so powerful, and not having to run booster energy. I think that when you have double in unburden on the team as well, Miss Mag is kind of correct that you do want some potentially some kind of terrain if you can find it. I'm not sure if both Ndidis got picked or not, but even just finding like a Pincurchin for this team might be pretty all right. I know that is still available. Just being able to get like Grafai to not have to rely so much on Prankster Sunny Day is pretty nice. And I'm not super keen on Hatterene. I think it's good for the like a B tier pick, but I do think that like when your dragon type is Walking Wake and your steel type is Berserker, like I've ran Hatterene Berserker before, and it's a little underwhelming in terms of power levels. But otherwise, I think this team is like pretty scary with the kind of damage that it can do up front. As we saw recently, like Grafai is actually a pretty solid physical attacker. Like just spamming gunk shot into the correct teams can actually just like go crazy. I like Clodsire as a pretty high value E pick overall, not terrible. I do think that there is sort of an issue with your ground resistances. I think like nothing here resists ground except for Chestnut and Halucha, both of which are going to be weak to flying. So I think there's a little bit of work that can be done to patch up some of that ground weakness, because a lot of the threats on this team are kind of weak to ground, like Dreadnought. And then, of course, Volcarona's not resisting it with the bug type either. And Sandy Shocks is also weak to ground, which is a really big important one as well. So I think that the team like has a really strong hard synergy in the form of Sun. But past that, it's a little bit cobbled together, and like if you're against like a Cloud9 team or a team that can like stop your Grafai before it gets Sun up, it does struggle a little bit. So I would look for terrain personally if I could find it, because that at least gives you a little bit more flexibility and optionality in prep. But I'm gonna put it in the middle of the pack for myself. What about you guys?
I would say wild card for me. At least in the middle or towards the end of wild card.
Miss Mag?
That's funny. I was actually gonna say top of middle of the pack. I don't. I think it's like literally like skirting the line of like middle of the pack, top of that, and bottom of wild card.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at too, because just because like obviously that main mode is just so powerful if you can get it up. The question is, can you get it up in draft league? It's sometimes tough. Like even with redirection from Volcarona, even with fake out support, um, even with Prankster, sometimes it can be a little bit tough to keep that sun going, especially with weather modes and like weather moves being so prevalent, right? Um, so I think it averages out to like top of middle of the pack wild card. So I'll put it in for the sake of posterity. We'll put it in the bottom of wild card for now. That's cool with both of you.
I think that's fair because relative to the only other tier, the other sorry, relative to the only other team in middle of the pack, I don't think this team comp suffers from a similar glaring sort of
Yeah,
weakness in terms of like lack of diversity and what it can do. So I think bottom of
yeah,
wild card is fair.
Yeah, that's a nice compromise between both tiers.
sure. Moving on to the Indianapolis Infernapes, coached by Trey. I believe this is Trey's first VGC league that he's ever done, and I think a couple of us gave him some pointers uh, in what to potentially draft here. Uh, so I think I'll just start off like Chi Yu, Iron Bundle, Gyarados, and like Raichu supporting that core is just so much speed and offense. It's just like kind of crazy how much offense that this team can pump out. Like in comparison with the Clothic Crabs, which I think's like has good offense but like needs a little bit of time to get it like get the ball rolling. This team just has that damage out the gate, right? It's super front loaded with what it can do. Um, and with like Raichu redirecting the electric attacks away from Iron Bundle and Gyarados, uh, you're getting a lot of value out of that. Um, and then you also do have like some sort of setup opportunities here, like Lucario with Justified is like an option, I believe. Passimian gets no Dugtrio as well, right? Gets beat up. So
Uh,
um,
Doug Trio lost speed up this
oh, does it
generation.
did it lose beat up? That's so sad.
Yeah,
Does Passimian still get it? That might be something you want to check.
yeah,
But
it still gets speed up. Yeah.
okay, well at least you get that. So that's nice. And then like the Dragalge Fungus, like Trick Room mode, not terrible honestly. Um, pretty solid overall, and like having redirection as well, outside of the Raichu redirecting electric is like pretty solid team, and you can never go wrong with a Miss Magius. I tried to get him to trade it away, but he wasn't super keen on it because I really wanted it because it's like it kind of fits this core, right? It's fast, it has some crazy good damage, and like you also have sort of a Perish Trap mode as well with the Miss Magius Doug Trio. Of course, both of them are pretty frail, so breaking out of it isn't too difficult, but it's still kind of there, and you still kind of have to respect it. Um, Whoever else wants to take it from there. Miss Mag?
Yeah, I guess I should jump in, right? I've been officially drafted to this team. I mean, I don't see why this is not in finals contention category. It's got the best Pokemon of the format on it. I'm right there. But all jokes aside, I actually think Chi-Yu Miss Magnus is a pretty nice budget Chi-Yu Flutter, man. From for the lack of power that you get in just the raw stats of the Paradox Mon, and obviously the ability to use booster energy, you get a nice flexible Ghostmon with 3 immunities and a lot of support moves at just 30 base points slower. I believe it's base 105 compared to base 135. That being said, I do like how the rest of this team kind of filed out outside of that mode. Gyarados Raichu, I think, is a very good oldie but goodie sort of pairing from Gen 1. And this team actually really benefits from having fake out support to set up some of its more dangerous sweepers outside of just needing to utilize the Fungus for Rage Powder support, which you can easily kind of offset with Terra Grass or a safety goggles. I also like Lucario as just kind of like a mixed attacking option for this team. Can go physical, can go special. Um, I wish he had a slower steel type to do like weakness policy stuff with the Jigology, or just a slower bulldoze user in general. And I'm not like super high on Shroodle as a Pokemon, even with Prankster, but the rest of the team is like pretty solid. Outside of like maybe like literally like Shroodle, and not the biggest Passimian fan, admittingly. When you don't really have too many strong physical attackers, and one of your best ones has inner focus to ignore intimidate, but outside of that, pretty solid team.
Ted?
Yeah, I think one thing to also consider with the Strudel is that you can have that like little mini weather mode, like Chiyu and the sun is nothing to scoff at. A choice specs overheat is going to do most of the time KO most things, so that's something that you have to watch out for if you're not careful. So yeah, just a little something there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I praised the team quite highly in terms of just like having that raw offense. But I will say, and I tend to value bulk, I think, more than other coaches in most of the time. But I think this team definitely is lacking in bulk. I wouldn't say it's super necessary if you can just KO most of the stuff that your opponent's bringing, but like I think there's a lot of like focus sash sort of competition internally, right? Doug Trio wants to run it, Iron Bundle wants to run it potentially, Raichu wants to run it, Chi Yu maybe wants to run it, Shroodle wants to run it. So like there's a lot of survivability here is like you got to be very very confident in your ability to play hyper offense in order to pilot this team, in my opinion. That's my main criticism of it. Anybody else want to chime in? Maybe tell me where they think this team falls.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd give it a wild card spot, bottom of wild card spot, like or not bottom. I'd say currently it'd be in between the LA Linoons and the Salt City Nassau Stacks.
Sure. Ted?
yeah, I would also agree with that.
All right. I'll go ahead and put that exactly where you guys said. Again, I might put it a little lower just because I'm, again, somebody who does value bulk quite a bit in terms of like the teams that I like to craft. But some players are just really good at hyper offense, and if Trey proves himself as that, I think that'll be this will be a really good team for him. So moving on to the Brisbane Blazekins, and just as a disclaimer, this is pre-trades. So Eminem's very close friend of the community, been in past UGAs before. She just replaced the prior coach who had to drop, and this was their team. She will be making trades potentially. I think in the morning or fairly soon. But so just as a disclaimer, this is the team pre-trades as far as I'm aware. But we can still give our thoughts to it and see, I don't know, how we think about it, and maybe even recommend some trades if we feel like there's areas where it could be changed. So I'll throw it to Ted.
So initially, I wasn't really too high on this team. Like, yes, the Disquake mode is really strong. Kilowattrel next to the Garchomp, setting up that tailwind, just spamming EQ next to Discharge is really annoying to deal with. But outside of that, I'm not really a big fan of their trigger mode. I do like Bronzong along with the Ursaring. I think setting up with like a Guts with the Flame Orb is nice, and being on the Trick Room is really nice as well. But outside of that, I'm not really a huge fan of it. Um, Iron Valiant is obviously strong on its own, and paired up with the Kilowattrel is great and all that. But like I said, like outside of that, not really a huge fan of this team personally.
Yes, Mac?
Well, I can chime in a little bit because I actually knew the original coach of this team. He's a very good friend of mine. So I did have some chime in on this draft in terms of some options. And I also talked them through some of those grace trades with the Samurott and there was one more trade he made. But yeah, definitely with the Samurai. So yes, the guard type Kilowattrel gets everybody's attention very quickly. It's a very solid Disquake mode. Kilowattrel's very nice, fastest tailwind setter in the game that's not Trankster or named Talonflame. And then you have Bronzong sort of at the top there with like a really solid Trick Room setter that also doesn't get hit by Earthquake. Big surprise there. I like Samurott here as an adjustment, as just sort of like a mixed, flexible attacker that can do support things. The overall coach's original goal was he wanted flexible mons that could do setup and that could possibly do support roles and offense. So he tried to kind of draft mons that could be flexible in their roles. I think he more or less succeeded. Like obviously, certain mons like Pavilion, like no disrespect, I wouldn't necessarily call it an offensive threat. Really, in any slightest sense of the world. Like, yeah, you got compound ice hurricanes and stuff, but it's better off as a support piece here. I do think the Iron Valiant is a very strong mon in the general sense and almost near impossible to prep for with mixed offenses that are very good and two very strong stab offensive typings. But I'll give this team at current the same criticism I gave the original coach. I thought it was a little too frail for my liking personally. Even with the modifiers of friend guard and like some supports from like burns from Salazzle and whatnot, I just thought this team was just a little too frail for liking in certain ways. I feel like it wants to go hyper offense, but I feel like it also leans a little too much into the support category to really embrace that reality.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I think like Bronzong is such a cool mon for a team that can like utilize it well, and I just don't think it's utilized super well on this squad. Um, like slow trick room isn't really what most of this team wants to be doing with like setup or anything like that. This team just kind of wants to go balls to the wall with Disquake mode, with Iron Valiant, getting like upfront damage with Zerork faking you out into thinking that it's a an Iron Valiant when in reality it's just a Zerork, all that kind of stuff. But like at the end of the day, it is still pretty frail overall. Like you're really gonna again hope that you are able to pilot a team that can be hyper offensive. And an issue with the Garchomp Kilowattrel is both weak to ice, so if you're in against like a Baxcalibur, for example, like that's gonna be an annoying mon to play around if you want to commit your Terra to that or not. If you're gonna try to position your Zerork, I think Avalugg is a pretty solid E tier mon, but I think overall this team kind of does suffer from like special defense, uh, not having too much of it. Um, and I don't know, it has like the right offensive tools, right? You have Salazzle with like fake out. I'm a huge fan of Salazzle, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just really frail. It's just really frail, and like the defensive mons aren't super defensive um, in their own right. Ursaring, I think, is maybe an exception. Like Evolite Ursaring is like pretty strong. Um, so I don't know. It feels like it definitely, in my opinion, could be a middle of the pack team just from the raw offense that it provides, but overall probably needs improvement, which I'm hoping those trades shore up. I feel like if you add a little bit more bottom end like Trick Room support for the Bronzong, you have a pretty well-rounded team overall. That's just my opinion, but you could take it in a different direction as well, and just find more tools to make that hyper offensive mode work better for you. Maybe some screen setters, maybe some redirection. I guess Vivian has Rage Powder, right? So that is a form of redirection, but maybe you can find better. Um, I don't know. Middle of the pack? Is that where we're kind of thinking?
Yeah, I would definitely say middle of the pack. And then like probably adding need improvement kind of thing of a way. Like it's middle of the pack, but also needs some improvement
Yeah,
on certain on a certain side of things. So yeah, I would agree middle of the pack.
sure.
Yeah, I can say bottom of middle of the pack as well. On the point about Pavilion redirection, I think this is a uniquely good redirection for this team because it offers the friend guard support. But I do agree that on the whole, like something I would love to see here is like maybe if like Bronzong was like Klefki. Like I think like this team could really benefit from like prankster screens
Yeah,
more than almost any other team we've seen so far.
it's a shame that I have the clef key, but you know,
Just
there
trade
might
it
be.
for the Zorak, man. Right there.
No, no, I want my clef key,
Simple
man.
solution.
Right. See,
I want my clef key. I want my clef key. All right. No, I think Amon, that I don't know if it's open or not, but like Pachirisu could be pretty solid for a team like that if you want to enable hyper offense with like a better follow me support. Like Kilowattrel plus uh, Pachirisu is actually kind of fun with like spamming discharge as well. So kind of interesting.
But speaking of Pachirisu, I wonder what this next team is going to be.
Oh, interesting. The Sky Strikers, and oh, they
man,
have
thanks for the
Pachirisu. Oh,
spoiler.
and it's our boy Ted. Um,
I'll let you guys start on this one.
yeah, for sure. Miss Mag, I'll let you start. I have to look it over for a minute, and you're better at
All
coming up
right.
with ideas on the spot.
All right. Sounds good. So I'll start off with some of the things that I like about this team. I think this is probably one of my favorite Firewater Grass cores I have seen so far. It is very unique, and I think that's what makes me really love it so much. Is that I would have never probably thought to put Iron Moth, Aqua Tauros, and Go-Goat together on the same team, but it works. I like the intimidation support for the Iron Moth and for the Qian Pao, which is kind of funny because it's like you're already making defensive stats weaker across the board, but then you're also kind of heightening your team's defensive stat by intimidating the opponent. I think that is a very nice sort of combo synergy there. Yes, I do like Pachirisu. I think redirection is I think it's decent for this team. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like the most useful. Like, I mean, it's a good mod in the general sense, but I don't think you need redirection here. Like, yeah, there's a few setup threats, and you can do setup with Trick Room and whatnot. Hisui and Zorik is great. I think it's a great support piece. You also have a lot of good mods to bluff with it, so that's always nice. Dragonite is Dragonite. I didn't even see the Dragonite Qian Pao. Yeah, that's VGC. I don't have any more to say on that. I think the only thing I'm not super keen on is maybe like Oricorio Pom Pom. I get why you have it. Like it has some nice synergy with Iron Moth and Fiery Dances and whatnot. But and I guess it does set Tailwind for you. Yeah, all right, I'll give it a pass. But overall, it seems like a solid team. It's definitely like a lot of bulk going around, which is interesting to say for a team that has Gian Pao as one of their heaviest hitters. But I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are, Masenko.
Yeah, I disagree. I think like the Pachirisu is actually really solid here. Not necessarily because for like setup purposes, but mostly just because like in my opinion, when you have a team with like really strong hyper offense tools in the form of, in this case, Chen Pao and Iron Moth, you do like having redirection to give them extra turns to attack, because they're obviously incredibly frail. One of the issues with this team that I had as he was drafting it, that I actually mentioned to him, was like before he had drafted Tauros and before like a couple of other mons, he had drafted Dragonite, Iron Moth, and Chen Pao, and I was like, yeah, you have redirection, but rock slides are gonna hurt pretty hard. Um, and I think with like Stunjorner, like wide guard on this team, it actually does quite a bit for mitigating those rock slides from being as consistent. And with power spot like boosting Iron Moth, like you could just power spot, wide guard and sludge wave with Iron Moth, and it just does like a ton of damage. And I agree with Miss Mag. Like the Zorork Hisui is really cool for this team. I think in general, like this team has most of the tools that you want for a hyper offense team, right? You have really good hyper offensive tools, but now you want to like sort of shore up some of those areas, like with, for example, a Dragonite with multi-scale is gonna go hard. Gotharita trapping people in to be disruptive with like fake out, and it's super bulky with Eviolite. Zoroark Hisui to like fake out, where that offense is coming from. All of those tools like very much work for me, and I think that honestly, this could be on the borderline of a finals contender team. I think like Mons like Fortress and Oricorio are less important or good for this team. I'm a huge fan of the Go-Goat. I've used Go-Goat before, and it's genuinely a really, really strong Mon, especially with redirection, letting it get bulk ups off and stuff. So I would maybe look to like drop Fortress or Oricorio and find something better for the sort of team, but I don't know. They kind of do the trick, I suppose. If there's nothing better, I know it was a pretty competitive draft. So, what do you think, Miss Mag? Anything you want to respond to with what I said, or?
Yeah, I will respond in two parts. I can see where the Pachirisu kind of just generally supports the team. I will agree with that. I think I was a little too. I'll admit I was a little too distracted by setup just because like I'm seeing like things like Go-Go, Dragonite, even Oricorio, and for one thing it's tough to have like, for example, Gotharita as like your only fake out mon, and I believe it's your only Trick Room setter. So it's like that sort of like duality in the roles there. I figured might put a little strain on the Pachirisu to need to do some setup. I will agree with you that the it does have a lot of the tools that like a hyper offensive team would want to have, and I think just sort of in comparison to the team before it, the Blazikins, I think this is a better way to approach that sort of hyper offense strategy. At least I think based on this tier list. One other cool thing, I will give you some free advice, Ted, because I'm a big Zoroark fan. Don't disguise it as Chien Pao, or probably not Taurus Aqua. That's probably about the only things I'll tell you for sure not to do. But I would love to hear more about your thoughts on like how you came up with this draft. I think it's just a really unique set of mons that I would have never really pictured together.
Yeah, so I won't give too much insight because I have a video coming out probably either later today or tonight or maybe tomorrow, depending on when I finish wrapping up that editing process there. But with the unique like Firewater Grass Core, I think it's mostly due because like some of the Pokemon that I wanted went earlier. They weren't per se snipes, but there were mons that I was looking at, so it just came all the way down to either Tauros Aqua for like the water typing, or I could have picked up Scizor at the time because I really did needed that steel type in that specific round. But in the end, I ended up picking Fortress just to cover that steel typing there, and I felt like at the time Tauros Aqua was a little bit more synergistic with the team because I didn't really have a good way of breaking screens outside of Brick Break, and I felt like Raging Bull with that water typing looked really nice on my team. So hopefully that answered a little bit of why I picked the Tauros Aqua there. Um, but other than that, I won't go into any more details because I'll cover that in my personal video on my team.
For
Will you
sure.
also cover the mons that you would have preferred to have, or can we get that here? I'm just kind of curious now.
Sure. I guess I could go over that. So the first two picks were probably a no-brainer. Chimpao came to me at number 11. I didn't really expect it to come back. I expected it to go probably like in the top 5, top 10 at least. So that was just a no-brainer pick for me. Iron Moth, I just wanted to use a different Paradox Pokemon because, as you guys know in BDL, I did have Slitherwing, but it just wasn't the best Paradox Pokemon that I could pick in that specific draft. So having Iron Moth there as an option, as a good, strong Paradox Pokemon that's really fast and can hit really hard on those special attacking side is really good. Um, it also I could have picked Cindy Shocks as well because I was looking at that as well, potentially, but I felt like Iron Moth was a good pick there. And then Zoro Kusui, I was also looking at for a very long time, especially from rounds 3 to 5. And I believe I picked it at number 3. I believe I'm not sure. I have to look back at the logs. Um, and I'm glad I picked that up because I really like the unique typing of Zoroark, and I also like the illusion disguise. Uh, bait, baiting out that fake out. Is really nice. And I will take that advice not to be disguised as Chien-Pao or the Taurus Aqua because I was actually thinking about doing that several times um, today, actually, prepping for my week one matchup. So I'll take that into in consideration. Um, yeah, I think that's all I'll probably say about it. I'll cover everything else, like I said in the video.
Sure. I'm happy to put you as a playoff contender. I think like the team is very well balanced. Sans some like slight adjustments that I would do maybe in the lower end, but even so, those lower end mons still have a potential to do well. I mean, they're still pretty decently high value, I'd say, for like especially Fortress. So let's go ahead and put you in the playoffs contenders. Our second to last team that we're going to talk about is the Appleton Wigglytuffs. They are my week one, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them just because I don't want to reveal my thoughts on necessarily where their weaknesses are. But you are both more than welcome to point out any strengths or issues that you find with the team, and I'll hand it off to whoever wants to pick it up.
I guess I'll start. So obviously the main thing you guys can see right now is that Talonflame Great Tusk. That strong VGC combo does so much. Setting up the tailwind for the Great Tusk, allowing it to outspeed certain things is nice. Spamming like EQ next to it is nice as well, and even the Headlong Rush as well. So great combo together there. Also Bramagust with Talonflame is really nice. Setting up the Wind Rider, getting that +1 in attack is nice. Spamming the Shadow Sneaks, Phantom Forces, Power Whips, a really strong option there as well. Goldtango and Screamtail, really interesting combo, I would say myself. I like Screamtail for the support. Having double screens is nice. Wish support, although it's not the same as singles, I think it's still pretty good here as well. Um, Having booster energy to boost its attack or special attack, really good mix attacker as well, is nice too. Redirection with the Toad Scroll is nice. Spore, Rage Powder, Trick Room, um, Knockoff, Earth Power, really good moves there for the Toad Scroll set. And Dudon Sparse as well. Like next to Brambleghast and Goldangle, you can spam those boom bursts, um, and proc throat spray as well. So a really good synergistic combo there.
Miss Mag, what do you got to say about this one?
So as I was listening to TED Talk, as I was listening to TED Talk, I actually was like, I don't understand this team at all. And then I looked at it a little bit more carefully. I kind of like this team. I didn't think I would like it as much as I might realize I am, but it was just like it's just interesting. It is almost like Ted's team in a way. Like it's just got like a bit of a unique flavor to it. Uh, that being like okay, I'll just start with what I like. The fact that this man or this person, this coach drafted both Screamtail and Wigglytuff, I just find absolutely hilarious. And it works, which is the funnier part because they are similar and different enough in this on this team that they can function sort of they can coexist. They can function well. Like because Screamtail does not gets like Trick Room and is a faster support piece, and Wigglytuff is a slower support piece. Doesn't get like Trick Room, but gets like stuff like Perish Song. Also offers like competitive and Frisk, whereas obviously with Screamtail you only get the one photosynthesis ability. So I think that's actually really cool, based on their logo, I can tell they are big fans of this line and mons that look like it. But then you have like the hard hitting fast stuff. There's the Talonflame with the Great Tusk, which Ted touched on greatly. Talonflame with Goldango is also pretty good. Like we always like to think about Murkrow setting Tailwind, but like without with Gale Wings, like literally without popping Gale Wings, that is basically just a better form of Murkrow. Goldango for this particular comp pairs well with the Bramble Gas. Toadscruel, solid redirection. Even with the doubling up on the grass types, there it is solid redirection. They also have Braviary for Tailwind and Anti-Intimidate support. They have the Dunsparce for a whole bunch of shenanigans. Grumpig to set Trick Room. It's like a weird mix of things, but like it also kind of works. Like they check off a lot of the speed tier boxes on the top end, on the low end. I think my only real criticism of this team is there are some mons I do feel like there's a little bit of role overlap. Like I don't quite understand why Braviary is here because I don't think this team is overtly physically offensive. In fact, I think it's actually fairly balanced on offenses. It seems like there is equally as many strong physical attackers as there are special ones. So I don't really think you need both competitive and defiance, and you certainly don't need another Tailwind center. So Braviary might be one mod I'd be looking to replace. Quillfish is kind of okay here. I feel like I would prefer maybe a water as well. It's a water type that's not weak. That's not weak to grass or ice, which is kind of nice, I guess. And intimidate support is kind of useful. But yeah, some of those lower tier picks I might refine a bit. But overall, it's a pretty cool composition.
For sure. Um, Again, I won't comment too much on it, but I think I agree with the Braviary being a little bit duplicitous. I otherwise think that this team is very expertly crafted, right? I would look personally, if I were them, to get an electric type on this team somewhere. Um, just because I think in terms of flying resistances, the only one here is Goldango, and you have a team that's centered very strongly around like Great Tusk. So people are going to be incentivized to bring flying types, especially against the double grass types. Um, so that would be my one potential criticism. Otherwise, Miss Mag said it all. You have like really well balanced offenses and defenses. You have really well balanced speed tiers and mix of offense and support. It's a great team. So where do you guys want to put it?
I would say it's a wild card. I think in the middle of the wild card, I would put it personally.
Miss Mag?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I would probably I'd put it between the Infernaves and the Salt City. I think it's a little bit better than Sebi's team. If I'm pronouncing your name wrong, my apologies. But the Salt Lake team, but I think Troy's team is a little bit more consistent in terms of the tools and the cores that it does offer.
Yeah, that's interesting. I maybe would have placed it higher myself, but I think I've also looked at this team harder than the other teams, so um, it's all relative. I think we can leave it there for now and move on to our final team, piloted by Prince Curb, the Clawitzer Clampers. Um, so this team has, as you'll notice, quite a few fire types, quite a few electric types, and a couple of grass types to pair it off. I think it'll be easy to focus on the criticisms, so let's get it out of the way, which is like this team has a lot of this team has a lot of rock weakness and not a lot of rock resist, right? Um, and a lot of you know like duplicitousness on the typings. Yes, you have Cinderace who, is Protean or whatever the other one is, Libero. Yes, you have Hydreigon who can help. As a Terramon is really strong and you can do some fun stuff there. I think overall there's obvious synergies, which is good, right? You get Torkoal Colossal, right? Torkoal being able to Lava Plume to activate Steam Engine. You get Sun for Scovillain. You get Sun for Leafeon. You get Tailwind for some of these mons with Fletchinder, which is really nice. But you also have a Pikachu with a team that doesn't have any like water types, or like I guess Fletchinder would be a mon that you can redirect with Lightning Rod for, but I don't see the much need for that. So I think for me, the main issue with this team just comes down to the fact that it's all just a ton of fire types, and it, again, sort of like part of the reason we docked some points from the Salt Lake Knackles is like, yeah, weather modes are really strong, but in Draft League you can potentially, you know, just like click a weather move if you know it's coming, right? And it's not much harder to be faster than a lot of these Mons, even in Sun, even with Scovillain and Leafeon on the team, right? But I'll pass it on to you guys since I think I've said basically everything that I want to say about it.
I'll let Ted go first.
All right. I was actually gonna let you go, but all right. Um, yeah. Initially, like when I saw this team getting drafted, I swore this team was gonna be a mono fire team, but that changed really fast. So props on them for doing that. Um, but going back onto like the colossal mode, Pikachu does get Surf. So if they did want to proc that we just policy Steam Engine um, with Surf or Scarf Surf Pikachu, that would be a pretty decent option. Not the best option, honestly, overall, but it's there. It's something that they can rely on if they really needed it. Um, but yeah, like going back off to that issue with like having, yeah, you have a good sun or weather based team, but in draft it's a little bit difficult to actually navigate it and get it going if you do have the proper counters to it and if you can actually stop it. So yeah, I guess combining that with the weaknesses that it has, it'd probably be like one of the lower end teams. But not saying that it's bad, but I think it could definitely have some success if put in the right situation.
Miss
All
Mary?
right, I guess this is where I'll jump in. I actually fought Prince Kerm in VDLS, and he had a rain team there, so it's very safe. I'd say it's safe to assume that they like weather. They like weather teams, which is fine. I think there's a time and a place in draft, and a composition in place in draft for weather teams. I actually really I struggle to have less criticisms against this team than I thought. You guys hit a lot of the nails on the head anyway, but I think one of the things that I would have loved to have seen on this team is literally any past form Paradox Mon. Just I need a little bit more jolt of offense on this team outside of like Cinderace, Hydreigon, and to an extent Rotom Heat. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I feel like it literally like the only ones benefiting from the sun are the chlorophyll mons, in addition to obviously the fire mons getting their stabs boosted. But like Scovillain, I feel like is for this team based on its comp is probably going to end up spending more of its time doing redirection and supporting the rest of the team than actually being a chlorophyll sleeper. And Leafeon, I feel like it's fine for the tier that it's in. It's very strong offensively, but that offense is really only used physical in the physical domain. It does not really have the flexibility that Scovillain does offer to hit special on the special side as well. But yeah, I mean, it definitely needs, like I said, it needs a little bit of well rounding. Like I actually generally don't understand why like Rock Midday is on this team at all. I must be missing something. Like there's not even I don't think a lick of sand synergy anywhere, even manually. I get the Pikachu pickup if that's one of the only few low tier fake out mons that that they could pick up. And Hydreigon is going to be pulling a lot of the weight for this team in more than one sense of the word. But yeah, outside of
Yeah.
that, I think the concept is cool. I just think some of the pieces, like at least like maybe 3 or 4 of these mons that have like duplicitous roles, as we said, need to be exchanged.
Yeah. So one really easy way I think would massively improve the team just right out the gate for me at least would be finding a way to fit Doxpun on this team because I we went through all the teams and I'm not sure any of them drafted Doxpun. you have a lava plume mode already. Might as well get that well baked body going. Could be a really solid pickup for the team that currently does not have a fairy type. Provides pretty good support for the High Dragon as well. I would also look to, I mean, there are many ways you could go with this team. I would find a good Trick Room setter for the Torkoal. Torkoal is obviously an incredibly powerful mon, as I've learned pretty recently, after being like completely swept by it. I believe 7-0 at least, if not 8-0. It was devastating, and part of the recipe for that was being able to set Trick Room for it, which would benefit your Colossal as well. I think just like immediately adding those two pieces, even if you wanted to stick with this heavy fire type theme, would make the team instantly better. Just having those like slight benefits. But for me, it's going to be a needs improvement currently, because I feel like it's just like too much of the same across the board.
So going off the Lycanroc drop, they can drop it for the Darkspawn because they're both in the same tier. So dropping a dog for another dog seems like a pretty fair trade-off.
That's what I'm saying.
And we all know, and the three of us know how strong Torkoal, Colossal, and Darkspawn are together. Am I right, gents?
Totally. Yep.
Tag team.
Shout out to the East Coast Extra Girls. You know who you are.
Yeah. Especially in a meta with closed Terra, those three are going to be insanely difficult to deal with potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we in agreement for needs improvement here?
Needs improvement.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, we got a nice little bell curve here, which is cool. I think overall the division has some really strong teams. I think everybody, for the most part, did pretty well with their draft, and any of the teams that didn't do as well in our eyes could easily be patched up with one or two quick fixes, or even could do well in our, as is, but might have a little bit of a harder time at it, with some good coaching and prep, right? So pretty impressed with how Kanto looks overall. Did either of you have any sort of final thoughts on the teams? And maybe we could go through them one more time just to, see if there were any adjustments we wanted to make to this tier list. What do you guys think?
I'm pretty square. I think actually just looking at how the tier list turned out, even for week 0, this shows me that the league, the division will be quite tight. I think it will be one of those like nail biter type of divisions when it comes down the line, based on how people prep and play. Just like that sort of that 10 teams in basically like wild card playoff contender territory, like that's a brawl just kind of waiting to happen, and we're only on the first power rankings, so I like how that's kind of shaping up. It makes things a lot more exciting. I don't think I would really move any of the. Actually, no, there's one team. I would probably move Ted's Sky Strikers slightly above the Drifloon team. I think Ted's team is a lot more well composed than the triple grass mons that still need to be kind of worked out. But I also don't think it's phenomenally less stronger than your team. So I think that'd be a little bit more. Your team's like really hard to break bulk wise, and I think Ted would struggle just a wee bit with that at the moment.
Sure.
Yeah. I already struggle with this team in VDL. Don't remind me, please.
Well, I did have Vaporeon versus the Dondozo, so that was a bit of a help in prep. Yeah, cool. Ted, did you have any final thoughts you wanted to impart on Kanto?
No, I think with the criteria that we went over through for all the teams, I think we basically place everyone pretty fairly, and even like what Miss Beck said, like for a week 0 power ranking, I think everything is pretty well balanced, and I think it's gonna definitely at the end of the season is gonna be a tight race on who's gonna be making playoffs and who's gonna be out. So yeah, we'll just have to see.
Alrighty, well, thank you for joining all of us. I hopefully intend to return to the tier list and potentially do another power rankings probably in the middle of the season, sort of like a mid-season check-in. We'll think about how we want to approach that. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and thanks you for watching. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Yep. Great
No
to be here.
problem.
Glad to be here.
Good job, everyone.